Welcome to Into the Desert, where we'll be having conversations about relevant issues with respect and without finger pointing. I'm Larissa Munns.
I'm Elgin Hushbeck. I'm the author of 11 books, including Seeking Truth and Preserving Democracy.
And if you'd like to join the conversation, please fill out your comments below, but remember to keep it respectful. We would like to foster conversation and not division. So what do you think the biggest danger to democracy is right now?
Well, we have a lot of dangers out there. I think the biggest one that's fundamentally threatening us the most is the polarization and division in our country. We can work through anything. If we sit down and we talk to people, and you probably know this with your circle of friends, hopefully you have some people who disagree with you about certain subjects. If you're not, that's probably a problem in and of itself. But if you have people who disagree with you, they probably seem a lot more reasonable than the people we see on television, the politicians there. What we need in democracy is we need for people to talk to one another. We need for people to communicate. We need to be able to share why we think the other side is wrong or what we think the best thing to do. And it's not a matter of compromising or, just going along to get along. You look at the Constitutional Convention. I wrote a book on the Constitution, and I spent a lot of time on the Constitutional Convention. There were some very, very heated arguments and disputes, and at times they had to basically stop because they were getting too hot, too acrimonious, and they needed to go on to something different. So they would change subjects just to get away and let some tempers cool down a bit. But they kept at it. At least most of them did. Some of them walked out, but most of them kept at it. And they ended up in the end producing the Constitution. Perfect Constitution? No. But was it a good Constitution? Did it work well? Yeah, it worked really well. So it's given us the country that we have today. And that's what we need to do. Will it be easy to talk to one another? No. Will it be contentious at times? Yeah. Well, sometimes we just need to say, okay, let's step back from this issue and talk about something else, maybe football. But that's what we need to do. We need to work through what the largest majority of us can come up with, not 50% plus one, but to work on a real consensus. A lot of our issues today are, there's a 60, 70, 80% consensus of what we need to do. But the people driving the issue are the people at the extremes who won't settle for anything but 100% of what they want. And, one of my favorite sayings is those who insist on 100% often end up with nothing. So we need to be able to work out a consensus and a direction for the country. A lot of fundamental issues face us, but we need to know which way we want to go. And we can only do that if the people talk to one another, listen to one another, and then try to find some common ground on which to build a consensus.
So how do we get to a place like that? I mean, if you think about the founding fathers, right? And you think about Hamilton and Jefferson, they, for all practical purposes, hated each other. Their politics were so vastly different that we went from a begrudging one-party system to a two-party system because Jefferson and Hamilton couldn't get along. And I think, a lot of people would say that if it weren't for George Washington, our country probably would have split because of the fighting between those two individuals. But yet, between them, we created it was more than just the two of them. We created this country, and our financial system allowed us to beat the odds when it came to how we were able to move forward and become not just a first world country, but kind of the number one controlling country in the world. Everybody in the world looks to America for culture and innovation and what we do as an example. And that was because of what our founding fathers did. But now I feel like the world looks at us and they laugh because we can't even agree on a president without having fights and riots and legal court issues. How do we get to a point where we can have conversations without people well, you're offending me. We live in this world of litigiousness and offensiveness and cancel culture. How can we have a legitimate conversation with all of that looming over us?
Well, for one thing, we're not going to find it in our politicians. Their job is to win elections. Our job as the people is to actually be the boss and control the government. We do that through our votes, but we also have to do it ourselves individually by listening to one another. It probably the best thing we could do is to listen to each other. We're too busy telling the other side why they're wrong to actually listen to why they might have a point in some area. Uh, I do a lot of discussions. I have a lot of people that disagree with me, and I cultivate those friendships because it's in those friendships. I mean, the people who agree with me will never be able to tell me I'm wrong because they won't know where they're wrong. But the people who disagree with me, they will point out problems that I would never see. They may not completely change my mind, but they may open my eyes to some caveats, some information, some ways of looking at things that I had just failed to consider. And so I cultivate those people in my life. And I think that's how we get out of this, not by electing this leader or that leader who will lead us into the golden land, but by basically listening to our neighbors. Why do they disagree with us? I can pretty much guarantee you some of the people around you disagree with you on something. So, why do they do that? Why do they disagree?
You make an interesting point. Sydney Watson just did a video on this where she talks about how the internet is designed to help foster hatred and disagreement.
People will knowingly tweet irritating things, like that stretch marks are disgusting, that beautiful actresses are mid, knowing full well that people are going to feel a need to give their 2 cents. Now it's an influencer strategy. And as long as making people mad remains a form of digital currency, we're going to see more and more people doing this kind of thing, making this kind of content to maximize the engagement on their content.
Why do we do this?
We tend to demonize them and think because they're bad people. But we know some of our friends, some of our acquaintances who disagree are not bad people. They just disagree. So why is that? And we start exploring why people disagree with us as opposed to condemning them. Then we can begin to get out of this morass and begin to work towards building a consensus. But that has to happen one person at a time, who decides they're going to start listening instead of condemning, and then beginning to move forward. And if we build enough of a mass of people who are focused on talking to the other side and learning from them and trying to build consensus, then this problem will fix itself. If we go down the road of condemning each other and demonizing and trying to defeat, well, we've seen that happen with virtually every democracy that's existed, like the Roman Empire, and it ended in dictatorship, because eventually one side or the other will get so concerned about the opposition that the only thing they can do is seize power to prevent them from taking over. And that's how democracy ends. And we're not there yet, but it's not too hard to see how the direction we're going is going in that way.
Thank you for listening to Into the Desert, exploring the wilderness of thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe and put your comments below. Remember, be civil. We want to foster discussion and not division.